Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, across the airwaves. We started out with Cleveland, Ohio, the Flats, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Browns, the Indians, the Guardians, the Cavs, whatever you want to call it. But nothing takes center stage like the American Sports History Podcast, hosted by my good friend, my brother, my mentor, Peter Ray. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing it, 347-205-9631. I know you're loading up. I'll get to those questions, pass them on to him. You can catch the archive version on blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports podcast platforms, wherever you subscribe to, powered now by Mancini Media. So without further ado, as I lay down the red carpet, I put that podium in its place, and I hand off the mic. First of all, Peter, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? And third of all, it is solidified in Cleveland, Ohio, that you got this partner every 2 weeks in that fine American city.
Oh, hi, Mark. I'm doing well, very well. I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, R-E-A. We make history videos, and you're absolutely right. For the fourth time, we have a native from Sacramento, California, lives in Seattle, Washington, played in the NBA from 1980 to 1995, and we've been having these wonderful talks about, especially NBA history in the 1980s and mental health. Welcome to the show, Mr. James Donaldson.
Hey, Peter, it's so great to be back with you and your audience. Mark, hey, I know you're back there overlooking the show. Good to be with you as well. So great to see both of you guys.
Your career, I think, is really fascinating. And the first question I wanted to bring up, you played basketball in Greece, Italy, and Spain. Fascinating. You want to talk about your experiences playing basketball overseas?
Well, I went over there kicking and screaming because my very first year overseas was the year after I got drafted by the world champion Seattle Supersonics. They drafted me, and I graduated from Washington State University in 1979. They drafted me in 79. They won the championship that year, and there was absolutely no room at the end, as they say, when it came time for training camp the following late summer, early fall. So my agent talked some sense into me, and he said, James, if you go to try out with the Sonics, they've got a world championship caliber roster up and down from 1 to 12. There's absolutely no way you're going to make that team. They've got those guys. They've proven themselves. They won the championship. So my advice to you, James, is to go overseas to Italy and play your first professional year, 1979, 1980, which I did. I went kicking and screaming. I didn't want to go to Italy. My advisors talked me into it. My college basketball coach, George Raveling, talks me into it. And they said, hey, over in Italy, you'll get a chance to play 40 minutes a night. You can put up your points and your rebounds. You can work on your game. If you make the Sonic team, you'll probably never get off the bench, or more likely you'll probably be cut and put off the waiver somewhere. So get over there, hone your skills, which I did. I ended up loving it. International basketball was just fantastic. I almost didn't come back, but I still had that burning drive to try out the NBA at least and see if I can make it there. So I played my first international year of basketball in Siena, Italy, and then I came back and did 13 years in the NBA. And then towards the latter part of my NBA career, I started going back and forth. I went to Greece. I played 2 years in Greece, 2 years in Spain, ended up 2 years in Italy. And I break it down like this. Italy was the best country in the world to be a tourist at. I mean, if you're into the history and the ancient Roman civilizations, the plazas, the Duomo, the Colosseum, that's Italy. Spain was one of the most fantastic places to live in. Just a relaxed atmosphere, taking siestas in the afternoon. People are lovely, wonderful people, great culture. And Greece was the most competitive basketball. I mean, I'm going up against some of the great basketball teams in Athens, Panathinaikos, Olympiakos. They have great basketball players in Italy, in Greece, great basketball fans in Greece. They are rabid for their teams. And so that was my 6 years of experience overseas playing. And I loved, after going over to Kicking and Screaming, I ended up loving every single moment of it.
Oh, that's amazing. Beautiful, wonderful. Don from Visalia, California, thanks for listening. He says he loves the show, having James on. A lot of people talking about it. Ray from Foster, Rhode Island, is asking, James, if you have any memories playing against the Boston Celtics, who he says owned the league.
Yes, they did, and they owned us too. The Boston Garden was the only arena that I never, ever won a basketball game in. I played in all the other great arenas around the country, and our teams, the Sonics, the Mavericks, the Clippers, the Jazz, we would come out of those places most likely with a win, a lot of times playing on the visitor court. But the Garden, it just escaped me over and over and over. I was with some great Dallas Maverick teams, and we go back there once a year and play. And each and every time they send us back home with an L in the column. Playing with the Knicks, with New York, we went to the Garden a couple of times, and each time came back with a loss. I don't know if there is that lucky leprechaun up there that kind of keeps the basketball from rolling in the rim at the appropriate times. But Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, DJ, Danny Ainge, they had a great, great team all those years, and they were always so difficult to beat at home.
Now, you've written a book celebrating your gift of life, from the verge of suicide to a life of purpose and joy. And came out this year. I'd like to read a passage here from the page 29. Choosing suicide would have been the most foolish, regrettable, and outright stupid decision I could have ever made. I understand that when someone is in that dark and scary place, there seems to be no hope and no tomorrow. I was there. Not only did I feel there was no hope and no tomorrow, but I also felt like the scum of the earth. I felt disappointed with myself, like an utter failure, and like I was totally worthless. So I know of what I speak. This book is about how I was able, with God's grace, to hang in there, even on those days when I felt I had nothing to hang on to. It is about how I was able to realize something was wrong and reach out for professional medical help and to a group of intimate, caring, and loving friends. If you ever find yourself in this painful place, please, I beg of you, don't end your life. As is often said, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I know when you're in that dark place, your problems seem permanent, like you can never get through them. But believe me, you have to allow yourself to be helped, and you must allow yourself to feel the love and caring of the many people around you who truly do care about you. So that's what a tremendous. Do you want to have any comment on your writing?
Well, it chokes me up just listening to that because that's where I was just 3 years ago, and not a day goes by now, Peter, that I don't wake up rejoicing and thanking God for pulling me through and letting me see another day. I am blessed beyond all possible means and all measures. And I realize that now. I didn't realize that 3 years ago, but I realize that now. Getting up and just watching the sunrise, watching, the dew on the ground, listening to birds and dogs and cats, in the neighborhood, children playing on schoolyards. These are all joyous sounds that I would have missed tremendously. And, of course, all of my dear friends that I would have disappointed so much by taking my life. And so I'm so glad, so thankful that I hung in there. And that's what I plead and pray for everybody out there. Hang in there. It's tough. Even now, 3 years later, I'm brought to tears and I'm choked up talking about it. But I'm through it. I'm on solid ground. I'm so much better off now than I was then. And every single day is a blessing. So don't discount your life. Don't throw it away. Please don't end your life. It seems bleak. It seems hopeless. It seems like there is no tomorrow. But there is. I'm living testament and testimony that you can make it through, and you will. Just please keep on hanging in there. And get a hold of me. You can find me all over the internet. I'll talk to you personally to walk you back from that brink that you might be going to and let you know that it worked for me and I'm here for you.
It's such a important message. I was listening to a video, and they're talking about how, well, the thing is, God does exist, and He created all of us, and therefore every human being has this tremendous potential and is unique and a contribution to make. And so so that's why, and if people can get through those hard times and stay alive, like a guy like you. Now, if you had died, it's just wonderful talking to you and hearing about your life and the fascinating life, and I think that's true of everyone. And then when the people are depressed, they don't believe it. They think, and life is painful, yeah, because I've been through it where it's so painful. But my message is that if staying alive each day, you feel like you haven't done anything, nothing is happening, but it is an achievement to stay alive. It's going to get you closer to the time when you can make your contribution to this world and making a unique, creative, beautiful contribution to this world that God created. So it's just a beautiful, important message to hopefully help more people stay alive and not end their lives, and then when they're gone. I knew a guy, real good guy, and he's gone. A wonderful person. He's gone. And so this is such a wonderful message that you have, and so it's good to it's painful, but it's good to keep spreading it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for letting me share that. Yeah.
Now I have a question. Let's see here. Late '80s, Cleveland had a good team. Do you have any memories of playing against Cleveland and the Cleveland Cavaliers? I'm sure you battled Brad Daugherty, Hot Rod Williams, Mark Price. Do you remember playing the Cleveland Cavaliers in the late '80s?
Oh yes, many times. Of course, they were in the Eastern Conference. I was in the Western Conference, so we'd only play them home and away series. But going out to Cleveland, and then taking that long bus ride out to, where are they, Richfield, Ohio?
Yeah, the Coliseum, right.
The Coliseum, 45, 50 minutes, an hour outside of town. I mean, it's a long bus ride, especially when you lose. It's even longer bus ride back to your hotel in Cleveland. But, yeah, those are great times. Now, unfortunately, they didn't have the Coliseum jam-packed with fans a lot of times until they got really good. When they went up against the Bulls and Michael Jordan and those guys, and the shot over Craig Elo, that's when they were really at their peak. But those are great times. And my dear friend, one of my former coaches, Lenny Wilkins, was the coach, and he did a great job with them back then. He went on to Atlanta, did a great job. So I was around some all-star players, Hall of Fame players, and all-star and Hall of Fame coaches. I look at the coaches I was coached by. I started out with Dick Motta, who's a Hall of Fame coach, Lenny Wilkins, Hall of Fame player and coach, Pat Riley, Hall of Fame coach, Jerry Sloan, Hall of Fame coach. I mean, these guys, they knew their stuff, and they were just excellent coaches. And even better than that, excellent people to be around.
Yeah, so you saw the Coliseum in Rome, and you played in the Coliseum in Richfield, Ohio.
Yes. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Nick Maletti, the guy the Cavs owner, he was Italian, so I think that was a good name for an Italian guy to put on a basketball arena.
That's right. Now back in those days, wasn't it Ted Stipien that owned the team? Maletti was out of, he got the team in the early 80s, and then it was the Gunn brothers in the late 80s. Gordon Gunn, that's right. Yes. Great memories, though. You're bringing back a lot of great memories for me.
Yeah, it's funny as we traded for Walt Frazier, who would step out of Madison Square Garden in New York City, step into the New York City nightlife, and after a game, and ready for and he'd step out of the Coliseum and it was facing a cornfield. So it was a tough adjustment for Clyde coming to Cleveland.
That's right. And a downtown Cleveland that didn't have much to offer either at that time.
if you made the trip from the Coliseum over, you're right. Eddie from Kirkland, Washington, move over Roy Orbison, Peter and James tearing up Believeland. Albert from Poway, California, and says that James, your stamina playing 14 years he's jealous.
Well, thanks, Dale. And actually, I had a long Ironman streak for the longest time. It went well over 600 games, almost 700 games. And then I got into an altercation, a fight with Mark West with the Phoenix Suns. Mark and I got tangled up, and we started swinging and throwing haymakers at each other. Luckily, none of them really connected. We ended up on the ground as half the players from both teams tackled us and took us down to the ground. And I was suspended for a game, which broke my long consecutive streak of playing day after day through, aches and pains, muscle pulls, colds and flus and upset stomachs. You just keep on going. I just kept on going. And my streak ended on that kind of an altercation. I was so disappointed, but, you just got to get up and keep on going. That's the name of the game.
Sal from Germantown, Pennsylvania. Thanks for listening, Sal. Sal says, hey, James, how would your former coaches survive in today's game? These players need to be held to a higher standard.
Yeah. A lot of my old coaches were old school, old type coaches that probably would not fare well in today's game. Because back then we really were, coached and taught basic fundamentals. We were taught to be disciplined. If you ran out there and did something crazy on the court, the coach would just yank you out and put you right next to him on the bench there. You can't do that with today's players. And it's a shame because I think that today's players are missing out on some great life lessons that, life isn't always going to go your way. You can't always have everything your way. It's not really your team. You are a teammate and a team member of a team. And so today's players, they talk about this is my team and they are the man on the team and everything runs through them. And even the coaches, bow down to that, unfortunately. That's the big change from 30 years ago to today's game nowadays is that the players truly do run the league now. Back then, the coaches, the general managers, the owners, they were in a lot more control of the game as it existed back in the 80s and 90s.
Tom from Alexandria, Virginia. Tom said, welcome, Tom. Tom says, are any thoughts on the sad sack my Washington Wizards, and he loves Phil Chenier?
And they were the Washington Bullets when I was playing. And you talk about a desolate, way outside of the downtown city core into the suburbs place of the Washington Bullets way back then in the 80s. And no fans except for that one crazy heckler in the back. He was an attorney. I forget his name now. He used to heckle the life out of us, and there'd be like 5,000 people in this big, huge arena. It was a great place to play. They always had a lot of good individual players, but they never really had the whole team concept put together. And so that was just kind of a revolving door for players and coaches for so many years. And luckily now they do have a decent team. They've got decent players going. I don't know if they have a new updated arena or not, but, again, kind of like Cleveland. When that was kind of in vogue then, a lot of teams were named after the downtown urban city they were from, like Detroit, for instance, and they play way out in the suburbs, 40, 50 minutes from town. I always thought it was kind of ironic for that to happen, but that's where the money was, I guess. That's where they could build big, huge, beautiful arenas on cheap land and probably some public support as well. So that was in vogue back then, and, those are my memories of playing against a lot of those kind of teams back then.
Bob from Auburn Hills, Michigan. Welcome to the show, Bob. Bob says talks about the bad boy, the Pistons, and he misses the banging underneath. Refs always blowing these phantom fouls.
Oh, yes. I remember playing against McFilthy and McNasty. these two guys, Rick Mahorn and Bill Lambier. These two guys, and they played the same position I did. They were just two a little bit smaller versions of me, and they would double team me. They would sandwich me. They would toss me around, and it was a physical battle. I remember one time going up with for a rebound with Bill Lambier. We both had our big hands on the ball, and we wouldn't let go. So we are just yanking this ball back and forth, and we finally end up tussling and rolling into the referee's leg, and the referee blew his knee out as we tumbled onto the end zone. And so they ended up taking the referee out on the stretcher, off the surgery. Lambier and I are still wrestling on the ground for the ball out of bounds, but neither one of us wanted to give it up. We can care less about that referee. So that's the way we played back then. It was just great basketball and great players to play against.
Ron from Macon, Georgia. Welcome, Ron. He said this is fun. Any memories of his Atlanta Hawks? Glenn, Doc Rivers, Spud Webb, Dominique Wilkins.
Oh, of course, yes. And Kevin Willis, big, strong Kevin I played against all the time. Who was John? He's one of the highest paid players in the league at the time. John Konkak was there. Tree Rollins. So they always had some great players, great teams. They never could quite get over the hump, because they had to go up against Philly or go against Boston or the Knicks or what have you. But going down to Atlanta, and this is one of my favorite cities to go to because, I wear a size 18, and all the guys that wore 17, 18, 19, 20, or 20 size feet, Friedman shoes in Atlanta would cater to all of us. I would go in there and buy 12 pairs of shoes because I couldn't buy them anywhere else in the country except for Friedman shoes in Atlanta, and all the guys knew that. So we'd all make the trek over to Friedman's before the game, and then we get back, have our pregame meal, head off to the game, and get out there and play. But I love playing against those Hawks. Those were some great guys, great players, great team, and still several of them still really good friends. Dominique, Tree Rollins, Kevin Willis, still wonderful friends to this day.
One of the really interesting people in NBA history is Bill Walton, and he was your teammate. Very interesting fellow. What do you remember about your time with Bill Walton?
Bill was hilarious, and he would keep us all cracking up. This was the time when he was going to law school at Stanford during the week, Monday through Friday. He'd come down to San Diego during the weekend and play the weekend games. So this is when I became a starting center in the NBA. I got traded from Seattle the year before down to San Diego, and I started becoming the starting center, even during the week, because Bill wasn't there on the weekend. They would team us up together. We'd had our own Twin Tower situation going. Bill came into the huddle one time telling our coach, Jimmy Lynam, Coach, I feel a three in me. And, Jimmy Lynam actually drew up a play and had Bill Walton try to shoot a three-pointer. It didn't look well. It didn't go well. But that was Bill. He would just scream and holler things in the locker or in the huddles that would make us all take a double look and say, who is this guy? And does he really feel he can hit a three-pointer out there? But, that was Bill Walton, and it still is Bill Walton to this day. That's exactly how he still is.
I remember watching the finals with the Lakers, Shaquille O'Neal, and Dikembe Mutombo, I guess, with Philadelphia, trying so hard to defend him. I don't know if your career may have overlapped a little. Did you ever think to yourself how you would have played against Shaquille O'Neal?
Well, I did play against him his first couple of years in Orlando. I'm wrapping up my career. I'm 36, 37 years old or so. And I was one of the few big, strong guys that could actually hold my own against Shaquille. Guys like me and Artis Gilmore, us big guys that could really, stand our ground. I remember playing against Shaquille down in Orlando, and he turns and looks at me, and he's like, "Whoa, how you're so strong? How old are you?" I said, "Hey, I'm 36." He said, "Man, by the time I'm 36, I'm going to be on the beaches of Maui chilling." But he kept on, but he kept on playing. He kept on playing until he was, past 36, I think he went. But that was the early young Shaquille. He was big and strong and fast and athletic. But it wasn't until he got to the Lakers where he became the dominant big man in the league for that whole decade. I mean, nobody had seen anything like this before or after since. Shaquille O'Neal goes down as one of the all-time great centers that the league ever had.
You probably didn't relish having him push you back, and under the hoop and then get dunked on.
Well, but this is what I'm talking about, Peter. I mean, I was able to hold because I weighed 285 myself. Shaquille was probably about 275, 280 back then. He went over 300 later. So he wanted to go more on quickness and agility and try to spin around you and dunk and those things. He couldn't back big guys like me and Artis Gilmore back down like he did with Mutombo, for instance. Mutombo didn't have the weight that we did. Or Mark Eaton, for instance. Mark Eaton was a big, strong guy that can hold you out there. So good luck trying to back those kind of big guys down. And Shaquille learned, though. He learned the game quickly. He could outrun us. He could beat us down the courts, and he did on occasion. He could spin around you if you let him. So, we had the experience. He had the talent. And it was an interesting intersection of things at that point in time.
Michael from Boulder, Colorado. Welcome, Michael. He says he's asking about your memories of the Chicago Bulls. He says that that they owned Cleveland. He says that James, you can come to Chicago anytime to move Bill Cartwright out of the middle. He never moved.
But Chicago was one of those teams that was so blessed. They were blessed and fortunate to have Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. With those two guys, you can build your team with a bunch of other guys who don't need to do much more than just stand there. Steve Kerr was out there, Bill Cartwright, Craig Hodges, so many of the guys. Bill Whittington I played against. So that was the team. But as a young Michael Jordan didn't know how to do the things that an older Michael Jordan did. A young Michael Jordan was leading the league in scoring, leading the league in field goal attempts. Running and jumping, and he was a highlight film night after night after night. But 5-6 years into his career, he finally started to settle down and realize that if he was going to be successful and get by the Boston Celtics and get by the Detroit Pistons and get to an NBA championship, he had to learn how to get the rest of his teammates involved. So he never had a bunch of household name teammates except for Scottie Pippen. Horace Grant comes to mind, somebody who was there, a mainstay. But household names, no. Didn't need them because he got them to perform a little bit better than they normally did, and they were able to win as a team, and Michael was still the greatest player at the time out there playing basketball. So it was wonderful to see the transition, the transformation from a young Michael. I remember a young Michael soaring above everybody, dunking on everybody. ESPN was coming along, highlight film material every single night before the age of social media. Can you imagine if it was during the age of social media like Kobe Bryant's career was? That would have been something that we'd never, ever forget.
Do you have more? Can you tell us more about your current work in the mental health field as the time winds down here?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of speaking engagements. I got a speaking engagement at a local bookstore here next week where we invite the community out to listen to my story, to listen to my advice to them if they're struggling or they know somebody struggling with mental health. Not a day goes by that our newspaper headlines don't have at least one headline pertaining to mental health. It's really ravaging our younger generation, which is really my focus, getting our young kids to realize that life isn't always going to be easy, and we have to be able to reach out for help. And I encourage them all to find one or two really close friends that you can always rely on and be able to call that person. Don't text them. Don't social media them. Get together with them in person and build that personal relationship with them that you're going to need at some point in your life. All of us are going through it, difficult times with the pandemic, and don't go back to relying on things like excessive drinking of alcohol or drugs or recreational drugs and things like that. That's only going to make the matter worse. You have to have a clear head if you're going to work your way through this kind of thing. And relying on good friends, relying on your medical professionals, your doctors, is the best way to get yourself through this. Like I said earlier, I made it through, and it was the toughest 12 months of my life. I've never would ever wish this on my worst enemy. But I made it through, and I know that you can make it through as well.
Our guest has been James Donaldson, who played in the NBA from 1980 to 1995. He's got a book out, Celebrating Your Gift of Life, From the Verge of Suicide to a Life of Purpose and Joy. And he's a very, very, very important person in the mental health field. Thanks so much for coming on the show again for the fourth time, Mr. James Donaldson.
Thank you so much, Peter. If any of your listeners want a copy of the book, just go to celebratingyourgiftoflife.com. I will personally autograph it as I see the order come through, and I will personally autograph it and drop it in the mail right back to you within 2 or 3 days. It's a great read. It's a great resource. It's a great inspirational piece to get you through what you might be going through, or a loved one. The holidays are coming up. Holidays are a notoriously difficult time for so many of us. So think of each other and be there for each other.
Yeah, this is so important to keep in mind, because even if we're not depressed, I think everybody probably has someone in their life who is depressed. So to be aware of that and think, okay, let's see what can I do to for this person.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we'll schedule another time. Hopefully you can come on, and next week we do not have a show. We'll have an archive show. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Mr. James Donaldson.
Good night. Blessings and love to everyone.
Very good.